Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the people management platform for hospitality teams. With its intuitive drag-and-drop rota planner and built-in budgeting tools, RotaCloud users spend an average of 66% less time on staffing-related admin, leaving them with more time to spend with their customers, train staff, or simply take a well-earned break. Head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to explore RotaCloud's full range of tools and features and sign up for your 30-day free trial. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Chantelle Nicholson, chef owner of the Michelin Green-starred Apricity in London. Coming up on today's show, Chantelle gets right on message.
I just think it is one of the best industries that you could be part of.
Phil loses control of his voice. It's pretty high risk. And Chantelle gives us a monster reveal.
That is quite life-changing for everyone's sake.
All that and so much more as Chantelle chats us through her wonderful story so far. Chantelle has got a hell of a journey to date. Having been a semi-late starter to the industry, she quickly found herself working in elite-level kitchens. She's since taken all that learning and now has an all roads lead here kind of a story. As such, there's so many great takeaways from our chat, all told with a huge amount of humility. I'd also encourage you to get yourself booked in at Apricity for an insight into how to run a restaurant with regeneration at its heart. Before we get into it, just a cheeky reminder to subscribe to the show and drop us a little review. It really helps more than I can say. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Chantelle Nicholson.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, very good indeed. Yes, we were just talking about the weather beforehand, so we don't need to talk about that on programme today.
Right, all done.
Yeah, excellent. Where do we find you today?
I am in Angel in Islington in London.
Excellent, and that will be your home, I would guess.
It is indeed, yeah.
Do you know, Angel was one of the first places that I went to when I came to London that I walked around and thought, oh, I'd love to live here. And back then was entry level and could not afford to live in Angel. But there we are. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. It's nice and central. Yeah, it's good. I love it.
Good stuff. Now, can't move on before we cover the accents. Where are you originally from?
From New Zealand.
How long have you been over here now?
Oh, gosh. 18 and a half years.
Really? Right.
Yeah. Came for 2 years, had a 2-year visa. Still here.
I assume that you've covered off the fact that you don't have that 2-year visa anymore and you've now got other visas that will keep you here.
Definitely covered that one off, thankfully.
Excellent. Okay, well, just give the world an overview of who you are and what you do for those of the few people out there who might not know who you are.
Gosh, an overview. So I am, I guess, first and foremost a chef, and I have a restaurant in Mayfair in London called Apricity. And the focus of that is very much on, I guess, regeneration, circular economy, for want of a better word, sustainability, but just trying to do things a bit more positively, make some changes moving forward. So that's probably it in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, I've written down that you've got your head in a few other things by the looks of things as well, but we'll come on to that in the fullness of the discussion, I'm sure. I just wanted, where did the name come from?
So the name actually means the warmth of the winter sun.
Really?
So very much symbolises, all the things that I wanted the restaurant to be about. So that kind of, that real rejuvenating feeling when it's freezing cold outside. It's a beautiful blue sky day though, and that sun on your face is just the nicest thing ever.
Yeah, well, lovely. I like that. I mean, I think I was introduced to you, not personally, but when you were at Treadwell's, we had the most amazing meal at Treadwell's that I can. It was a wonderful tasting menu for not a lot of money. That's what I remember. And we walked out of there thinking, how are you able to do that? It was remarkable. Really, really great experience.
Oh, that's so nice to hear.
Excellent. Right. Well, I mean, let's get to it. Let's get all the way back because having looked at your backgrounds, and there's a few people that have recommended you to me as somebody to speak to on this show as well. One of the wonderful things that it looks like to me is that you're definitely not somebody that set out on a course to go into hospitality. So what did you start doing and how did hospitality come about?
So I actually Well, I finished high school. Well, towards my end of finishing high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do next.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll do something. Well, I knew I was going to university. That kind of wasn't a choice. It was just that was the way it was. So I thought I'll do something kind of broad at university. So I went and did a law and management degree at university.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you must have been, I suppose, academically pretty good then, because I would imagine that that's not something you can just kind of waltz into.
So it was, yeah. I think I was one of those people that had to. I'm kind of a bit all or nothing, so I either kind of go in full guns blazing or not. So when it came to study, I would have to kind of, let's say, cram for the exams to actually make it through.
Right.
And I think because, yeah, as time will tell, it wasn't something that I enjoyed hugely, the study.
Right.
That's why I diverted off.
Well, yeah, because of all of the subjects to choose as well, I'd imagine that studying is quite an important part of learning the law.
Indeed, yes, and a lot of it can be rather uh, not particularly enthralling. So
At what point?
I'm trying
At
to think
what
of a
point?
nice way of saying it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but that's the thing, right? There's lots of different jobs to do out there, and lots of different people to fill these jobs. So it's about finding out what you're not connected to as much as it is about what you are.
100%, 100%.
What
Completely
At
agree
what
with that.
point did you start to think, this is maybe not the journey for me?
I think I probably thought so. I actually started cooking in my third year of university because I needed a job, and obviously, yeah, kind of for many reasons. One of the principal one being kind of my student loan was growing by the day.
Money,
So
yes.
I thought I would do something that I would kind of enjoy and that I could learn something from. So that's when I started cooking, and I think probably, yeah, that became more and more the focus, I guess. And when I kind of in my last year at university, I think I was actually working full time, so kind of 40 hours a week. And the study was just the annoying bit I had to I kind of
Right,
had to get done and finish off. And I think it was more, yeah, I guess a bit of fate led me to London really, which is when I kind of thought, yeah, I think this is probably what I'm going to stick at.
okay. So the fate to London. What was the fate that
So it
led
was
you here?
actually I actually entered a competition in New Zealand,
Okay,
which was the ironically Gordon Ramsay scholarship competition, the one and only time it's ever been held outside of the UK. Well, alongside what was going on in the UK, and just happened to get into the final of that. At which point was chatting to one of the judges, who was Josh Emmett, who was the head chef of the Savoy Grill at the time, who said to me, "Well, there's a job in London for you whenever you want one. Just let me know."
really? Right.
So
Just a talent spotting from literally the other side of the
the other
planet.
side of the world. So I just thought, okay, great. I'm not going to turn that opportunity down. And I think literally went into work the next day and handed in my notice and got my visa and jumped on a plane.
Wow, wow. And so this would have been what kind of yearage are we talking about here?
So that was 2004.
Okay, so
Yeah,
Gordon was very much front and center then, but at that point for sure, it
he
wasn't
was.
even up and coming. He had arrived.
Yeah, he had. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, was there any part of you at this point was thinking, this is like a lot to take in? Like this is a change of career, a change of scenery. Going into a city that I suppose all you really know about is what you can read and see. I guess had you travelled to London before then?
No, no, I
No.
hadn't. I had a lot of friends here at the time because it is the usual migration for, yeah, New Zealanders of a certain age. Well, was at that point to get, because a 2 year visa was relatively easy to get. So yeah, I kind of felt like I had enough familiarity here, but thankfully didn't really, was quite naive about what I was getting myself into, which I'm actually really grateful for now, because I think if I'd
Yeah.
realised the grandeur of the Savoy and the grill and Michelin stars, etc., I probably would have been
Talked yourself out of it.
too scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had quite a few people on the show now actually talk about what a wonderful quality naivety actually is. because without it, you kind of just, as you've just said, you might overthink something and then actually just not end up doing it.
Hugely. I think it is a complete, in that case for me, it was probably what caused it to actually happen and keep happening, really.
Got you. Okay, so Arrival London, not just any old job as well, like you're flinging yourself into the deep end of quality. Yeah, what happened next?
Yeah. So I was, it was one of those instances where I went from working 7.5 hour days sitting at a computer to working 18-hour days on my feet.
Yeah,
So it was a slight adjustment, but I just remember feeling like a sponge, like everything was just new and interesting. And yeah, I was just learning a huge amount. So I think I was at the Savoy for about just over a year and a half. And then I kind of jumped from the frying pan into the fire, literally, and went over to Petrus, which was at the Berkeley Hotel
right. And that
at
was
that time.
2 stars at the time?
I hadn't quite got it second, I
Okay.
think.
So
About
it was all on
almost
you
did.
then.
Almost did. I
Right.
would not. No, wouldn't even go there. Thank you.
Right. And was that something that was in your psyche at the time that you absolutely wanted to I suppose, take this sponginess of learning and just continue to kind of explore it and see to what level you could take yourself?
I think from actually the move to there was um, probably for a very practical reason, was that Josh, who was the head chef that had actually employed me, was leaving the Savoy. He was
Right.
moving on somewhere else, and I think that because I had, again, fellow Kiwi, and we got on well, I think that they kind of realised that I wouldn't hang around long if he wasn't there. So they thought they'd kind of take
Right.
me out, preempt the move before I did it for myself. Yeah, and that was very much a very different experience.
Okay. You're saying it with a slight grin on your face.
No, probably a grimace more than a grin, I would say. Very, very different culture, very different experience. So wasn't probably, I think it was one of those instances where you know what you don't want to be versus what you want to be.
Yeah, well, coming back to the point you were making about the law, right? And
Mm,
it's the same within the subsectors, like within the sector, isn't it? You've got to learn the thing that makes you tick, as
absolutely.
and sometimes you've got to swim against the current to find out these things. And I don't doubt that the learning experience it brought you something for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, culturally, it's such a massive part of day to day work, isn't it? I mean, if you don't feel a connection to the culture, then it's not going to last long.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And what level were you at this point?
I think I was almost a junior sous chef, perhaps. Yeah, I think I was.
So,
Yeah.
to this point, have you done any formal chefing qualifications, or are you literally just learning as you go?
No, learning as I go.
Right. Okay. And to this day that we're in now, is that always been the case? You've just always kind of learned self-taught, I think you call it. Well, somebody else is teaching you, but
On the
you're
job training.
yeah,
On the job training, I would say. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, across all facets really, and that's from, obviously now it's the whole business and operational side of things as well,
yeah,
and it's all just very much been kind of on the job.
yeah. So, from Petrus, what happened next?
So I became, I actually started doing more of an operational role slightly within that business, because we went from being part of a large organization, to being kind of independent overnight. So picked up a lot of the kind of HR operational functions at that point, which then, I guess for me, I thought actually I want to do more of this and I enjoy this. It's interesting, it's new, which then led me to actually opening what was then known as the Gilbert Scott in St Pancras.
Yeah.
So I opened that as general manager. So I came out of the kitchen,
Right.
and learned every single aspect of the business and of that particular building as well, which was quite a challenge. yeah, I kind of did the 360, I guess, of restaurants.
Yeah,
Um,
we'd have had a lot going on that site as well, I guess, because one, it was a part of the Renaissance St Pancras, which is just, I mean, visually is just, I think, one of the
yeah,
most
stunning.
beautiful buildings that is a hotel in London.
Hmm.
But two, you've got to, I suppose, play the Marriott game as well as manage the own internal expectation, and you're learning a new craft at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I literally had no idea what I was doing, so it was very much a, um, yeah. I kind of spent a lot of hours doing doing it all and learning it all.
Yeah. You seem to be somebody who likes the deep end then,
Well, it just seems to kind of attract me. I think attract
right?
me to it. Yeah.
So you're a GM now at this point. How did you find that then, the kind of moving from the kitchen into kind of more front facing operational role?
I think what I enjoyed was the variation of it, really, and the variety that it encompassed so many things, and also understanding how a kitchen worked and menus and food. It meant I was never kind of too far away from it all as well. So it was something that just, yeah, and just everything was an opportunity. I saw it as kind of an opportunity to be able to learn something or to create something, really. And whether that was from, a team perspective or a guest perspective or a functional, more operational perspective, it was, yeah, I had kind of full control over what was going on, which was quite, yeah, was very much of interest, really.
Yeah, and there's not many people make that leap as well. That I'm trying to think of someone, and it happens indirectly, of course, as chefs become restaurateurs and all of that. You kind of course, you're more involved with every element of the business at that point. But to
Mm,
make I suppose, a conscious decision in what you might classify as early to mid career,
yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose, is a hell of a leap of faith in yourself. I suppose that you can cope with a very different set of skills. Was there a part of you at this point that was planning ahead, or was this just something that was just an
No.
opportunity that was really?
There wasn't time for planning ahead, I don't think. I think there was never a moment's pause. So I think it was never like, right, what do I really want to do? It was just like, okay, this is an opportunity. Do I want to do it? Yep, okay, let's just roll with it. So it was very much just kind of that mouse wheel, I guess, and just the treadmill of just, right, keep on going.
Yeah. What I really love about that as well is that I think a lot of people who run into trouble in their career, not this is you in any way, shape, or form, but they get defined by the role that they do. But actually, you're kind of, I suppose, highlighting just how adaptable we really can be if the drive is there to do that.
Mm,
If you got made redundant tomorrow as a chef, as an example, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you can do in your life.
yeah.
You've just got to give yourself the credit that you can adapt to other stuff.
And I think again that kind of naivety piece of, back at that time, I didn't really know, I guess, the full scale of what it would be. But I think
Yeah.
just yeah, I guess just diving in head first, really.
Was there no part of you that wanted to swim towards the shallow end a little bit?
Oh yes. There was, yeah, there was definitely a part that was there, but it was kind of, yeah, I guess I wouldn't really allow it to come to the surface in some ways.
So, how long were you general manager at the Gilbert Scott?
Oh, probably. Well, actually, after 3 years, I think I then went on to the next, which was Treadwell's, and again more of an operational role as
Yeah.
opposed to being in the kitchen, and that was the build. Yeah, that was kind of the project build from start to finish. Whereas at the Gilbert Scott, it had been kind of third party, so this was kind of right in the crux of it, really.
I mean,
Um,
once again, like a brand new skill set to learn.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, very true. So yeah, it was, I guess, yeah, opened that kind of in an operational role whilst also still keeping an eye on the other one. But then a year later, so 2015, we must be at now, decided that, well, the head chef had left. We hadn't had a great opening. And I kind of thought, look, I'm just going to go into the kitchen for a bit, steady the ship, and then I'll come back out after a few months.
Yeah, I mean, what ops people can say that they can do that?
But they never really came out.
Right.
So kind of then started this hybrid role, I guess, where my laptop would be on the pass next to me at all times, and I would be also running the kitchen at the same time.
My life. Yeah, God,
Mm.
it's actually it's wonderful to hear, because I this is the joy of this industry for me, is that there's no right or wrong path. There's only
Mm.
opportunity and your willingness to take or deny it. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. And I think if you clearly have a willingness to take advantage of opportunity. But yeah, I also sense that sometimes it'd be nice just to, I don't know, relax into the day and have a cup of coffee and just see what happens, or come and do a
Absolutely.
podcast or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that probably didn't really happen until COVID.
Really, right? Okay. Well, that takes us. Treadwells takes you up to that point, doesn't it? And into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened to kind of I suppose change your psyche, or change? I mean, I suppose you can just say COVID happened.
Well, I think that first lockdown, and obviously everything preceding that was pretty horrific until furlough was announced, etc.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was the first time, probably in what point was it, 16 years, that I'd actually stopped. And the weather, I loved that first lockdown. Absolutely loved it. It was the first time I'd stopped. The weather was beautiful.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the first time I actually really spent much time at home. I kind of all the things I hadn't had a chance to do in a very long time. I started doing again, cooking for myself, even just gardening, enjoying the sun, all those things, exercising, just getting to know where I lived around my local area, all the things that I guess probably a normal person does, really. Yeah, so I think for me that was the kind of that kind of aha moment of what am I doing and why am I doing it?
Yeah. I think it definitely happens to a lot of people, as you say, when you're kind of on the hamster wheel, as it were, and you're just
Yeah.
routine, I suppose, as much as anything else. This is what I do. This is you just get into the swing of doing it and
Mm.
don't really think and contemplate and think about your direction, and are you fulfilling the best of you and all of those
Yeah.
things. So yeah, I think a lot of us will look back on that time. This podcast wouldn't exist without it. It's that that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll look back on that time and think we needed that. I mean, I know that there's
Oh, there's
there's a definite
many
negative
other.
side as well, but
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got to take the positives where you can get them, and if it was the moment that kind of just allowed you to come back to yourself a little bit and assess, then
Mm.
yeah, it's absolutely served a positive purpose.
No, 100% did. Very much so.
Yeah. So what happened then? What was the summarizing of your internal thinking?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, it was more the sense of, well, what, if I was to, I mean, it distilled down to this, but I don't think the question was I ever asked myself, but it was more a sense of, well, what do I want to do? What kind of business do I want to run, and what's important within that business, and how can I then also create something that is a bit more than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
and something that actually can do some good as well as just being something that makes money.
Yeah. Do you think this, and please forgive this question, but do you think this is an age thing? Because I say that because I have the same thing happen to me, whereby I got into my 40s and I was like, right, this is not enough. I need to be doing something that's bigger than me, and hence the podcast is the first foray into doing that. But it's definitely something, as I've got older, I've become more in tune to the fact that I'm really conscious of my impact. I'm not conscious of the money that I make. The money I make is a byproduct, actually, of all of the other hopefully positive stuff that I'm doing.
I think it's probably, well, I think with age it comes that ability to reflect, doesn't it, and actually think a bit further than just the next couple of years ahead of you.
Yeah.
And actually, I think think about others and think about how it all integrates. and how it can integrate in a better way and become
Yeah.
more personally fulfilling.
Yeah. So I suppose describe that journey then in terms of how you go from being what you were at Treadwell's to then, I suppose effectively what you're talking about is going out on your own and really creating something that is driven by you.
Yeah, and I think that was obviously I had full ownership of Treadwell's, but I hadn't set it up with full ownership, and I
Yeah.
think that was the bit that was kind of didn't sit right. I kind of felt like I was trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So it was very much a sense of, okay, well, rather than just jumping at an opportunity that could be, commercially viable and lucrative, what's something that actually can, all these things that I've realized are important, how can I create a business that has those as kind of the pillars and also as the real framework, rather than it being the other way around and always scrambling to make the business work? How can I actually make the business that can then be a number of things within itself?
A very quick word, if you'll permit me. Providing great customer service is all about having the right people in the right place at the right time. And that's exactly where our sponsor RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud makes managing your team's rotas, attendance and annual leave easy. With its simple drag and drop planner, you'll be creating rotas for your team in minutes, while its built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. One RotaCloud customer actually reported that they'd gone from spending 25% on their monthly turnover on wages to spending just 19%, all thanks to RotaCloud's intuitive rota planning software. So do your business a favour and head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to start your 30-day free trial and find out how much easier organising your team can be. Now let's get back to it. Yeah. So you have had already kind of the entrepreneurial spirit from your time at Treadwell's, and I suppose indirectly with everything else. But as soon as you kind of start taking control for something, then you by very definition you usually got a little bit of entrepreneurial flair around that. Quite a daunting prospect though, I suppose, as well, especially in the time that we're in. To a lot of people, it depends on who you speak to around this, but at the moment it can be a really good time for hospitality, but for some people it's a pretty desperate time as well. So is that just a case of you kind of got to have the courage of your conviction? If you genuinely believe in the thing that you are creating, then you kind of believe that things will just fill in around that. I mean, obviously you need to have a strategy, etc. But yeah, to start a business in the time that you have is, you could say, it's pretty high risk.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, there were a number of factors at play. I think one of them was, well, I know how to run a hospitality business. I've kind of run 3 of them and, have all been successful in terms of being able to be financially sustainable.
Yeah.
And also the operational know-how, kind of felt like I had all of that, in my armory in some respect. So it was more a case of, well, it's a bit now or never. And in a way it is. There was a sense of, well, I want to see if this does work. I want to see if my, perhaps more ethical, moral way of running a business is feasible and is viable, and does it work? And I guess there is that sense of, as you alluded to, of, well, there's other things I can do if it doesn't. I think that's probably I had a backup plan,
right?
Not in concrete, but I knew I could. There were other things I could do if I had to. So for me, it was more of I really want to see if this can work, and I really do want to make some positive change, and I want to see if it is possible, or if it is just a pie in the sky thinking that actually it's a bit more aspirational than functional.
Yeah. I suppose you covered off, from a psychological perspective, you covered off the worst case scenario, which is that if it doesn't work, then I know there's something else I can do. It's and as soon as you take that risk away, then I suppose it's the green light, because this is also, we were talking about naivety earlier on. This is the byproduct of growing old as well. Is that we do have more of a propensity to neglect naivety as a trait to help us get to a conclusion. We do think things through to is this actually going to work? Is it too risky? Am I talking myself out of it, or is somebody around me talking me out of it because they don't necessarily have the same risk parameters that I do?
Yeah.
And all of these factors, I suppose, play their part in whether you end up pulling the trigger or not.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So how long have you had Apricity? Is that the pronunciation?
Yep.
Yep.
So, well, it's been open just over a year, so about 14 months it's been open.
Right. And for context, we're recording this in June of 2023. So just for somebody who's listening to this in 12 years' time.
Gosh,
yeah.
Can you imagine?
I know.
But I think the kind of idea of it and premise of it started, 2.5 years ago, really. So kind of double that time. Things were put in motion to start it.
Yeah.
Really.
And how long was that process for you, really, then, in terms of, I suppose, first of all, you've got to make the decision that, right, I'm now going to do this. Well, I'm now going to explore what this might look like if I'm going to do this thing. How long did it take you to kind of, I suppose, formulate a plan, for want of a better phrase?
I guess that's a good question. I think part of it had been bubbling away for a long time. So I think actually the kind of practical, okay, yes, this may happen, or this can happen now, was probably, again, it all just started with conversation with someone that had a site and that was interested and interesting. So that was how it all began, really. I think the idea of it was very much, the bones of it were kind of formed, or the pillars of it were formed, but the actual overall structure, etc., that took longer. And until there were bricks and mortar, it was, just more of an idealistic view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Great. And how is business? How are you doing?
It's good. Touch wood. It's good. I mean, there's challenges, but I think actually the things that I kind of put in place to start with have kind of served really well. I think one of my biggest things I'm grateful to myself for actually sticking with is a 5-day week.
Right.
That is quite life-changing for everyone's sake.
Yeah.
Mine probably mostly, in terms of just having something that I know is 5-day a week operation. So there's 2 days a week that I kind of, it's not, obviously it's in the back of my mind and there's still things going on, but actually that kind of pressure of it being open.
There's a release valve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And knowing that, even with staffing issues the way they are and out in the world, thankfully we don't have those, but just knowing that there's that security of, well, it's 5 days a week. And I think in the past, every other operation I'd run was 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Which now just
I know
absolutely
seems mad, doesn't it?
Oh, I mean, I never switched off ever.
Yeah,
never switched off.
No, indeed, and this is the thing. I suppose as an industry, we've woken up for sure on this point, without question. Some operations, it's impossible. You can't close a hotel for 2 days a week, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But equally, there is this, thankfully, been this wonderful shift of focus into, right, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that when people come in and work for us, that we're actually giving them the best chance of success and not just, working them to the bone.
And I think too, for an owner-operated business, it's also, I spend a lot of time thinking about the team, but actually if I'm not thinking about myself alongside that, then it's actually not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think of all the things that I want my team to have and all the, I guess, parameters and, kind of procedures. And then sometimes I won't put those in place for myself, but actually it's important that is, it's as important.
Totally. Well, I have a saying. I like to think that I made this up myself. I've probably nicked it from somebody else, but is that in the pursuit of excellence, one of the best things you can do is look after yourself first and make sure that you're giving yourself everything that you need to thrive, to be the best version of yourself, and blah 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 and all that sort of stuff. Because it's not until you do that actually that's when all the really, really good stuff happens. That's when you have the freedom of your mind again, where you're not just constantly firefighting stuff that happens, but it allows you the moment to think about, actually, if we brought that into the business, that's going to have XYZ knock-on effect. And, it might not work, but let's try it. And otherwise, you're just perpetually, and once again, I'll use the hamster wheel as the analogy, but
Yeah, 100%.
And you never come off it, and you're just dealing with the same stuff
We don't know how
over
to
and
come
over
off
again.
it because you're on it so regularly that you can't see the way out, the way off it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not enough is made of this for me in leadership, because certainly historically it's always been, that lead from the front kind of thing, which is still there for sure. But lead from the front doesn't mean first one in, last one out every single day,
Exactly.
trying to set this pedestal up that nobody can achieve or can sustain. And I mean, I know that sustainability, which is, it's a word that gets bandied around a lot now, but it's a massive part. It's not just about planet sustainability, it's about human sustainability.
Yeah. And people are always the bit that get left out, and I think especially in our industry, I mean that's we are a service industry. We're based on people, and that is our biggest asset. It's our biggest everything. And if we're not, regenerating that, then there's not going to be nothing left.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice segue. Because you're a regenerative restaurateur. What does that mean?
I think it is. I mean, for me, I have a bit of an issue with the word sustainability, but I don't quite have an alternative yet. Well, there's no alternative that people understand to that level, because my issue with it is that we don't want to sustain things. We need to regenerate them. We need to improve them. And I think if you look at even, people, you don't want to sustain your team. You want to rejuvenate them, regenerate them as much as yourself, as much as a business, as much as everything else, as you said, as much as the planet. And if we don't do that, then we're going to fall pretty short, as we're kind of seeing the impact of now in some ways. So for me, I think that regeneration is kind of a great way or a great phrase. And if we think about it across all aspects in terms of people, planet, purpose, and profit, because we need to be profitable, otherwise we can't survive as businesses.
Yeah.
If that kind of becomes the key thought process, then I'm hoping that better things will come.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things whereby actually a lot of business for me is around ensuring that you look after your own performance as best as you can, as consistently as you can, for as long as you can, and make sure that you're doing the right things as opposed to shortcutting and stuff like that. Because yes, it's a harder initial route to take, but the benefit from a long-term perspective is way, way better. You look after all the good stuff, and the good stuff will come to you at some point down the line. There's no question about that. And I suppose there's a little bit it feels like there's a mental shift towards this a little bit as well. I know it's difficult to maintain when busyness gets in the way.
Yeah.
We all want busyness, because busyness usually means your business is thriving. But you can't neglect the other stuff at the same time as soon as you get back to being busy, I suppose, is the key point.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it is, it's just one of those things that I think when you're setting up a business, and I guess that's, for me, every business that I did set up kind of was based on either someone else's wishes and goals and objectives versus actually having a bit of a blank slate and saying, right, what would the ideal business look like? And what would that encompass? And very much those things, as you say, that if you're constantly problem solving and firefighting, there's not any bandwidth for how do you move
Advancement,
forward. Because you're just doing, it's just day to day. You're just treading water effectively.
Yeah.
And that scope to be able to look forward and think in more of a 360 manner is it's priceless.
Yeah, critical, actually, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise nothing moves forward, ever.
No, exactly. And especially if you're a very, if it's a small business and there's not that many, heads involved in it, then actually it's almost kind of more important that those heads that are involved have got that scope to think and to create and to innovate.
Absolutely. Through all of these changes, are you closer to the shallow end now?
I am. Yes, I know where it is. I know how to get there.
Yeah. Indeed. You not ready to be there yet, but certainly,
yeah.
Well,
I can swim between the two. I can swim between the two.
Yeah. Well, that's massively important, isn't it? What I really love about your journey is this kind of, there was no real plan. Like,
no, it wasn't.
Like, you just got on with it.
Yeah.
Opportunity presented itself. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll give that a go. Okay, that didn't work as quite as I thought it would be. Let's go there and try that. That sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll add something different to me. And then you kind of wake up and here you are. Not wake up, but it's a hell of a journey to this point. And in many ways, it feels like you're just really getting started.
It does feel a bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're now, well, you hold the reins. You're kind of the master of your own destiny in that respect. And yes, of course, there's always going to be pressures, and there's always going to be things that will come along to stump us. But I think by setting the pillars, as you call them, firm in what you stand for and what your ethos is going forward, then you stand a much better chance of long-term success, I would say.
Yeah, because I think you've got that structure, haven't you? That kind of internal structure. And I think, it's funny because there's all these things now I see, and I thought, there's just so much to do in so little time. Like, how am I going to do everything I want to do?
Yeah.
And a lot of, I think now it's just seeing all the, the things that do need solving, such as the food system and health and everything in this country. It just becomes more and more, there's just more and more I want to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. When I went onto LinkedIn, wonderful source of research is LinkedIn.
It is.
There's this thing now that it does. It says talks about, and it tells
Really?
like all the posts that you put out on LinkedIn. I guess LinkedIn uses its technology to summarize the stuff that you generally talk about in hashtag form. So the things that you talk about are, and you maybe didn't know this, but hashtag reuse. Circular economy, sustainable food, food waste reduction. Those were the key ones. So if ever there was a message out there of the stuff that you stand for, it's
Thanks,
right.
LinkedIn.
It's right there. It's doing your work for you. It's doing your marketing for you.
Great, I love that.
But I think all of these things are great, and every time I hear you or see you do something, you really stand by this message, and I love that. But I actually think this has massive power in your ability as a restaurant to succeed in your marketing, right? Because you're also, if people are connected to you and what you stand for, they're far more likely to come and want to support you and get behind you and enjoy the fruits of what you're actually trying to put together.
100%.
Yeah, great. Well, you can leave it there. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think I think things, as with always with any business, things that you kind of didn't think would be a big part of it kind of become a big part of it in terms of, as you're saying, that integrity of messaging. It's like, this is what we stand for. This is why we do it. And I think before we opened, I was like, are we going to get kickback on this? Are we going to get people that are upset by this? Are we going to get, all the things you kind of think could go wrong or could upset people? It's kind of been the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess in a way it kind of affirms that whole integrity piece. And actually, as you say, kind of, if it's what you believe in and you're really passionate about it, then stick with it. And as long as every other box is ticked, it will work out.
Yeah, absolutely. You're also involved in other stuff by the looks of things as well. Again, my little friend at LinkedIn told me this, that you're involved with Guardians of Grub.
Yep.
What
Indeed.
is that?
So that is a RAP initiative. So it's about food waste, basically. Trying to minimise food waste in the hospitality sector mainly, for then hopefully it to kind of the outreach to happen further afield. So very much, I guess, kind of valuing food is probably the more eloquent way of saying it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose a lot of this feeds into just the stuff that you're really passionate about now as well. You're also on the Food Council in London.
Yes, so the City Harvest Food Council. So City Harvest are a charity that redistribute surplus food.
Right.
So they obviously twofold: stop food waste and also feed those who need it most. So for me, it's those are the things that need some focus. Is obviously food security for a lot of people, minimizing food waste, and then also, the health aspect and which brings us on to, children and children education, which is another piece for me that I feel quite passionate about as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose if we can educate them now as early as possible, then 20 years down the line, we've got a much better base point to start from.
Yeah, exactly. And just understanding and valuing food is huge and needs a lot more attention in schools.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's probably a whole topic on its own, to be honest.
It is. It very much is. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And the other things I made a note were All's Well.
So All's Well was a pop-up I did during COVID. Again, just something that, talking about taking risks. I opened a pop-up in October 2020 purely because I needed something positive to think about.
Right.
And had a whole team of people that I couldn't give enough hours to, and a whole lot of equipment that I didn't need because we were only using half of everything. So decided to open a pop-up in East London, which was supposed to be for 6 months and actually turned up to be just under a year, actually,
right,
given all the lockdowns. But I think that was where the first iteration of Apricity, in a way, because it was that very much just kind of small, local, and just then that was literally done from bones of not much, really.
Right, yeah. So that was the test kitchen for Apricity.
In a way, yeah, it was in a way.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. And then the last thing I made a note of was the London waste and recycling as well. You're also involved in that.
London, it's now called.
London. Right, okay.
So it's an organisation that is, well, the purpose is to move London towards a circular economy. So looking at all sorts of consumption-based emissions. So food is obviously a big part of that. Waste, so recycling and reuse, repurpose, and really focusing on how to a lot of behaviour change stuff, really.
Yeah.
Encouraging people to take their keep cups out with them is one of my big bugbears.
Yeah.
Takeaway coffee cups just do my head in. Yeah, so all those things of kind of just returning back to the way we used to do things. This is the thing. It's most of it is common sense.
Yeah.
And it's not new. It's not innovative. It's actually valuing stuff and valuing food as part of that stuff is hugely important, and actually wanting to repair, to reuse, refill, all those sorts of things, and recycling being the kind of the end result, really.
Yeah. Got a new hashtag for you to use in the future. Reject convenience.
There we go. Well, it can be convenient, though.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. Yeah, because I think definitely convenience has a bad rep, right? Because it's convenient, so it's the easy option a lot of the time. That's a lot of the reason, I suppose, why people don't teach themselves how to cook. Because they're conveniently can just go and get a pre-made lasagna, which we won't get into the quality issues around that, but
no, all the knock-on effects on health, on everything.
Yeah.
I think the short-term cost is very convenient, but the long-term cost is actually more inconvenient.
Yeah, very good. God, that's a subject for another day as well. God, there's so much. Yeah,
I know.
But it just feels like almost as a society, we're only just scratching the surface of this now, and there's a movement towards it, and there's a lot of people who care about all of these things, and I think just need more and more people to care.
Yeah, and to actually take the action. I think rather than just worrying about and contemplating about it, it's actually just doing. And small steps are they're still a step.
Yeah.
So if it is just taking your keep cup versus getting takeaway coffee cup, or if it is eating more vegetables, there's lots of small steps that can be taken that aren't too daunting.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. I do like to ask this question of everyone. I don't know if you're prepared for this or not, but do you have any funny stories from your career so far that you can share? Share being the optimum word here.
Yeah, that I can share. Funny. Things probably weren't funny at the time, but I guess on reflection, there's some of them. There's probably more random things than funny things.
That works. Yeah, I love random as well. Quirky, stupid.
Like just,
Yeah.
cooking in weird and wonderful places. I've had a lot of those. I've cooked on the Orient Express, in a
Wow.
kitchen that was probably,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
not
not exactly
not much.
stationary either. They're
No,
probably
I was
moving
like, I
around. Like,
remember
yeah.
trying to pour some soup and just wobbling
Oh
from side
God.
to
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I literally probably have done some very, very random things that people are like, "You did what?" Cooked on film sets, cooked
Which films? Or can't you say?
burnt. So the one that was supposed to, yeah, the one that was kind of set in a restaurant kitchen.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Kind of looked at the script of that, all sorts of things, and just yeah, in fields, rent like just literally very, very, very random places. Yeah, cooked in places that actually cooking wasn't allowed. Therefore, you couldn't really cook. You just had to kind of assemble.
Right.
Yeah, all sorts of just weird and wonderful
It's
things.
like these TV shows with the likes of James Martin and Rick Stein and the Hairy Bikers and all that, and they're out on location cooking.
Yeah,
Like that happens. I always
yeah,
remember one of my favorite ever lines from any TV cookery show ever was on the Hairy Bikers when they were up a mountain in Hong Kong or something like that, with Hong Kong as the backdrop, and they'd lost an ingredient or something like that. And one of them, I can't remember which one it was that said it, was, "Oh, this wouldn't happen to Rick Stein, would it?" And I was just like, so true, so true.
I know.
But yeah, I suppose it does give you amazing opportunities to do these left field things, right? That you maybe
Mhm.
don't necessarily think about when you're starting your
No,
career. But again, opportunity presents itself, kind of like initial responses, yes, and then worry about,
yeah, and then why did I say
yeah,
yes when you're standing there in the field? Why did I say yes to this
yeah,
again?
absolutely.
Mm.
No, that's great. Final question before I let you get on with your day. What would be kind of your main reasons why somebody should join hospitality as a career?
The variety. The variety is huge.
Well, you
No,
just kind of proved that with your
yeah,
last little section on where you've cooked.
no 2 days will be the same, and I think that's just so interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's just the skill set you can get from it because it just crosses every single skill set there is really. The
Yeah,
whole plethora of everything. It's creative. It's interesting. It's dynamic. It's I just think it is one of the best industries that you could be part of. And it makes people happy, brings
yeah,
joy to people.
yeah.
There's not many of those.
No, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Uh,
Mm.
no, fantastic. Look, thank you so much for making time. I also appreciate we've overran a little bit, but I really, really enjoyed hearing your story. I look forward to seeing what you've got up your sleeves next as well. But I'll definitely be popping in at some point to enjoy your wares after my wonderful experience at Treadwell's.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Take care. And there we have it. I've wanted to get Chantelle on the show for a while, and her story did not disappoint. She's leading the way in how we can all do better in our businesses, and a massive thank you to her for coming on the show. We'll be back as usual at 8 PM next Wednesday for another story from hospitality, so until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.